Welcome to the Couch Scouts Podcast. We provide league-winning analysis, advice, and tools to help you dominate your league and build a dynasty. Scout, draft, win. Here's your host, Matt Cooper.
Welcome to the Couch Scouts Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Cooper. With me is my co-host, Matt Rupert.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I'm surviving. All right. It was a great day. Had a great day at work. And I'm still feeling a little under the weather. So in that sense, I'm powering through. It is cold and flu season here and everywhere.
No escaping it with the kids.
Our guy, Matt Jackson, is down for the count again. When he texted us yesterday and said, "It's back," I couldn't even believe it. And his wife's down too. So y'all that are praying people, pray for Matt Jackson. It's been a rough couple of weeks for the Jackson family. Flu has hit their household many times over. So prayers up for him. But on tonight's podcast, we're going to be continuing our Inside the Prospect series. Tonight, we are going to be discussing Quinshon Judkins, running back out of Ohio State. This is the third week in a row that we have covered an Ohio State prospect on the podcast. So if you haven't yet, go back and listen. We covered Emeka Egbuka and Travion Henderson. And this week, it's Quinshon Judkins. So he is listed at 6 foot and 219 pounds. He's a junior. He was the number 53 running back in his recruiting class, was only a 3-star prospect. So this was not a blue chip recruit. Started his career at Ole Miss before transferring to Ohio State this year. And he's had quite an impressive college career, Matt. He started out at Ole Miss as a true freshman, 3-star recruit. Zach Evans was in the backfield, which we know he ended up being a 6th-round pick and was not the NFL guy that everybody thought he might be, but he was a Debbie Darling. I mean, you're talking about a 5-star running back recruit, number 2 in his class behind only Bijan Robinson was Zach Evans. And he had just transferred into Ole Miss and was expected to be the star of that team. Quinshon Judkins comes in as a true freshman, takes his job, runs for almost 1,600 yards and 16 touchdowns as a true freshman in the SEC. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, his stat line is just pretty ridiculous. In the SEC for a freshman, it's just bananas what he did. And just watching his tape, I went back and watched a couple years worth of games, and not just this year, to really kind of get a sense. And he just came in pretty much fully developed. He doesn't look like a normal freshman, and he's just pretty much carried that throughout the rest of his career. He looks similar to like the player he was. So it to me, it's kind of crazy. Like, I don't feel like his game evolved that much, but it didn't need to. He's just the same kind of really good all around player. Not to bury the lead here.
Yeah. So sophomore year, he comes in, puts up almost 1,200 yards with also 15 rushing touchdowns. Now, almost the same number of touches as his freshman season, but 400 less yards and 4.3 yards per carry. So the efficiency was not there his second season at Ole Miss. And then he transfers. He goes to Ohio State, splits the backfield with Travion Henderson, almost dead even, 50-50. And he goes for over 1,000 yards again on 5.5 yards per carry with another 14 rushing touchdowns. So he did not have, in 3 collegiate seasons, he did not have a year where he did not cross 1,000 yards and he did not cross double-digit rushing touchdowns. That's pretty impressive from a statistical standpoint. Oh, and by the way, he finished it with a national championship. So understandably, Quinshon Judkins has been on radars for a few years now if you play the Debbie format. And he's a player that most people are talking about as a top 3, if not top 5 back in the class. And we're going to talk about tonight, is that justified? Is he that high for us? What do we see on film? So if you're new to the show, This Inside the Prospect series is my favorite one of the year. We get into the film. We're film grinders. We have all 22 tape that we access through dynastynerds.com. If you want to check that out, use promo code COOP. You can get 15% off. That's where we watch all of our rookie film. And we watch at least 5 games on every prospect. In this case with Judkins, I watched significantly more than that because especially his current year stuff, because he was splitting with Travion Henderson, the touch count was a little bit low, and the clips were like 3-4 minutes long instead of 8, 9, 10 minutes long. And so I just didn't feel like I had a great feel. Even a couple of them, one was against Akron, another was against Western Michigan. So I wanted to watch more to get a better feel for who he was as a player. So I watched a ton of film this week. We make extensive notes. We go trait by trait. What do we see in vision, elusiveness, power, athleticism, so on and so forth. So we'll hit everything. We'll talk about what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, and ultimately where did we land on him with a film grade, and how do we see him translating to the NFL. So all that being said, let's start, as we always do, with the running back position, with vision and patience. And I'll turn it over to you, Rupert. What did you notice here from Judkins?
I feel like this has just been a common theme as we've gone through this rookie class, and I just really like his vision and patience. Really good in these areas. I thought he was really patient, especially at Ole Miss, where I felt like they were running a lot more power. He did a really good job just kind of waiting behind the line, letting his guards kind of make their way up and then, hit the hole up the field. He's definitely much more of a north-south runner. So I ended up grading him at a 7.5 on vision, 8 for patience. And the only reason I went 7.5 instead of 8 is because I feel like I would see some cutback lanes where he could get some extra yards, but he just kind of bury his head, get skinny. He still would pick up yards, which is a really great trait from him because you're pretty much never going to get behind schedule handing him the ball. But he's not the most creative, if that makes sense. Like, he's not going to look for extra cutback lanes to try and make the big play. He's going to be a little bit more conservative, if that makes sense. But I think that's something that's going to really make him endear him to his NFL coaches.
Yeah, he's not always looking for the home run. He is a grinder. He's willing to get between the tackles, get forward, plow for just keep the offense ahead of the sticks, fall forward. He rarely gets hit for a loss. So, yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add there. I had 7.5 vision, 7.5 patience. So I was half a point lower than you on patience, but otherwise basically in lockstep there. I did note that he had versatility in terms of being able to. There's plenty of evidence on film of him running a gap scheme and a zone scheme. So he can do both, which is a nice note to have, that kind of wherever he lands, he should be able to run the system. But yeah, follows his blocks, gets what's blocked for him. Not the most creative runner, but he's consistently right. And that's a good thing. So let's get to the next area of his game, and that is elusiveness. What did you notice from Quinshon Judkins in terms of elusiveness? How did you grade him there?
I graded him like all right. I have him slightly above NFL average here. It's just not his like where he wins, but like he can do it when he needs to. He's good enough to be able to juke and not take a hit head on, things like that. He can break tackles, but he's just not the guy that's going to be a jitterbug out there, doing a lateral jump cut like 3 feet to the right or to the left and having a guy grasping for air. That's just not his game. And that's okay. He has enough juice there to be able to operate efficiently.
Yeah, so he's not the quickest guy laterally. He's a little bit stiff-hipped. I gave him for quickness. That was his lowest grade for me. I think I had him at second lowest grade. I had him at a 6.5 for quickness, which is on the lower side, but had him at a 7 for elusiveness, which, like you said, slightly better than NFL average. He does have a nice dead leg. That was probably the move that I saw most consistently was he could plant one foot in the ground, cut the other direction, and make a guy miss that way. And it was never stringing multiple moves together, but he could, if there was one guy in the hole that he had to beat, he could do it with a dead leg cut. So, um, yeah, elusiveness similar to you. Not terrible, not great. Um, let's go to the power and the contact balance. Which, if he's not an elusive back, I hope we're going to say he's a power back. Otherwise, we're going to end up saying he's overrated. What say you, Matt Rupert?
Yeah, this is definitely where he wins. I grade him out. I give him a 9 for pad level. He gets low, and I saw multiple times on tape where the safety is basically like getting down on his knees, like trying to get lower than him, and it still doesn't work. So I thought that was really great. His contact balance is pretty phenomenal, and then to match with it, he's very physical and powerful. I gave him an 8.5 for physicality and power, 8 for contact balance, and 9 for pad level. This is just where he's just another one of those guys in this class that's just really hard to bring him down. It's really, really strong lower body, and it shows game in, game out.
Yeah, I had a lot of the same grades as you. And, for those that are maybe listening for the first time, we don't compare notes. We just get on here and share what we saw. And a lot of times we see it the same way, which is encouraging. This is a guy that the longer I watched him, the more I was like slightly bumping the grades up
Yes,
because
same,
he's not
same.
the flashiest guy in the world. And so the first couple games, I was kind of like, I don't know. Like he's got some good qualities, but he's not blowing me away here. But just the more I went back and like paused and just watched all the little things, like you said, the pad level, I had him at a 9 for pad level, just consistently lowering the boom on people, punishing them for trying to tackle him. He didn't have the overwhelming power of like an Omarion Hampton, but he was so physical. I don't know. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, Rupert. Did he look 219 to you?
He looked thick for sure. Um, yeah, I would say yeah. I think he
Okay.
did.
See, to me, I don't know that he did at first, at least. He looks thinner to me than like Travion Henderson, who's listed at like 205. I was surprised that he was 220. Like he played like he was 220, but just looking at him on the field, he didn't look 220. He didn't look like this huge power back, but he definitely played with a power style, and I think he's compact and strong. I just don't. I was surprised. I'll be curious personally to see combine where he weighs in. Is he actually 220? Um, but that's not to say that I thought he was like weak or soft. It's just when I think about like Caleb Johnson and Omarion Hampton, who are also both listed at 220, they both felt a lot bigger to me. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah, they definitely look bigger. I thought they were more in the 225, 230 range.
They were listed
Uh,
almost exactly 220, if I
really?
recall correctly. But
Okay.
um, yeah, as far as the grades, though, I had him at an 8.5 for physicality and power, which I think is exactly what you said. 9 for pad level, 7.5 for contact balance. So that's a half a point lower than what you said. And I had him at an 8 for break tackle. So this was definitely the strength of his game as a runner and something that he definitely excelled in. It wasn't the highlight package of like an Ashton Genty spinning out of every tackle, impossible to bring down, and it wasn't the truck stick package of an Omarion Hampton. It was just good physical running, like hard nosed running. Like he made you pay for trying to tackle him, and he almost always popped you backwards for a couple extra yards. He wasn't breaking as many tackles as he was just picking up hidden yardage everywhere.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that remind me of Leonard Fournette, like another guy that always fell forward an extra 3-4 yards. No matter where he got hit, he's getting an extra 3 or 4 yards. So, like you said, those hidden yards really add up in a game. Help the offense stay on schedule, not get behind, and bad passing downs on third down. And it's just, I think he's going to be a really good pro. It's funny you said the same thing because I started off underwhelmed through like the first 3 games. I was expecting I wasn't expecting there to be a gap between him and Travion Henderson in my perception, but the more I watched it, there's a lot of subtlety to his game. It's not all flash. There's some subtlety there. Like the dead legs, they're not as, flashy as like the crazy jump cuts that we would see from some other prospects in this class, like a Dylan Sampson. But
or an RJ Harvey.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about RJ Harvey.
I don't want to tease too much there.
I know. Shameless plug. We're going to be talking about RJ Harvey on the bonus show for members only. So if you're not already subscribed to CouchScouts.com, it is a treasure trove of resources to help you dominate your rookie draft and ultimately dominate your dynasty league. We have all 22 film in there, not on the offensive rookies, but we have some defensive rookies. We have a lot of underclassmen Devy guys, so you can get in there and scout guys like Jeremiah Smith. And our rookie guide is going to be the ultimate cheat sheet for dominating your rookie draft. We've got one-on-one team consultations and then the bonus podcast, which I just mentioned. So we're covering a lot of the sleeper names that you want to know. Like, okay, I'm hearing some buzz on Twitter for RJ Harvey. Should I buy into the hype? Sign up at CouchScouts.com. Listen to our bonus podcast. We got you covered. Or if you don't want to listen to the podcast, read it in our rookie guide. We're going to be very thorough, and we're going to give you everything you need to know on the class. So you can get that for as little as $5 a month, and you can save 15% by signing up for an annual subscription. So check it out, CouchScouts.com. And without further ado, let's get into the second half of our breakdown here. And the next thing we're going to talk about is athleticism. So burst, quickness, long speed, and obviously size adjusted with that because, whether I think he is or not, he's listed at 219. That's all we've got to go on right now. So is he a plotter, or how athletic are we talking about here for Judkins? What did you notice?
I definitely wouldn't call him a plotter, but he's not a home run hitter at all either. He'll make guys miss, like we saw in the championship game. He'll break off long runs, but he's probably going to get caught by a cornerback or a safety. But people knock him for that, but it's really okay to me.
Yeah.
Like the guys that are averaging 5 yards a carry, keeping the offense on schedule, doing his job, like those guys have a place in the NFL. Everyone can't be a Devon Achane and just be a home run hitter no matter where you're at on the field. And I'm not going to knock him for that, but just grading him, I gave him a 6.5 for game speed. But I thought his burst, particularly north-south, was pretty good. Gave him a 7 there. And then 7 on the quickness because I saw a lot of the same things with the kind of like just one cut ability. So, and we talked about it just a few minutes ago, like the subtlety to his game. He has some pretty good quickness in a phone booth, running up the middle, just like a two-legged, like little cut to kind of get out of the way of a swatting defender, things like that.
Okay. So you said 6.5, 8, 7 for those three?
No, 6.5, 7, 7.
7, 7. Okay. So I had him a little bit higher on the burst than you. I felt like I was seeing him defeat angles quite a bit in that first 10-yard from the line of scrimmage. It was the long speed that he couldn't maintain it. So I had him 6.5 game speed. Like you said, he's getting run down. Just not when he gets in the open field and it's a foot race, he's not usually winning it. But the short area burst, I was really impressed with, particularly for a 220-pounder. I felt like that jumped off a number of times. So I had him at an 8 for burst, but I had him also at a 6.5 for quickness. So I felt like he was a little stiff-hipped, changing directions laterally was not a strength for him. So overall, didn't blow me away as an athlete, wasn't terrible. Particularly, I did like the burst for his size. But yeah, overall here, I mean, the only thing we haven't talked about yet is the third down skill set. What did you notice on the third down skill set?
This was one where I kept on bumping up my grades as I went along. I just kind of went randomly when I'm going through the film. And the first like 2 games I watched, he had some drops, some blown pass protections. I was like, ooh, this isn't looking too good. And the more I watched, the more I saw them splitting them out wide and running routes, things like that. I still did see a decent amount, not a decent amount, but I still saw drops, but I still like saw him out wide catching with his hands away from his body. So they were using him as a weapon in that area. So I gave him a 7.5 for receiving, and ended up giving him a 6 for pass protection. It's respectable, not great. After watching Henderson, I
Right.
guess like I feel like my grade probably could be a little bit higher there, maybe like a 7. But going from watching Henderson to him, uh, it just felt like there's a big gap there.
Yeah, I had him at a 7 for catching and a 6 as well for pass pro. So we were again within like half a point of each other. I the receiving, I put that he had soft hands, but not much in terms of route running. I didn't really see any, maybe a wheel route or two, but not really being split out wide. Like what I saw out of Travion Henderson on the same team, I felt like was significantly more versatility, whereas Judkins, it was more of just the close to the line of scrimmage, dump off, get some yards after catch, check down, which is fine.
Yeah.
Pass fail, he passes. Um, but he's not a dynamic third down threat in my mind. And the pass pro, I just said like he gives good effort. The technique needs work. The awareness was pretty good. He got between his man and his quarterback, and he would usually impede him, uh, often by diving at their legs rather than standing up and
Yep.
actually blocking the guy. But it was effective. It was a little ugly, but it was effective. He was willing. He's got a big body. He was willing to throw it in there. Definitely room for improvement there. So yeah, overall, I don't know if you guys that are listening get the impression that we're just kind of whelmed with Quinshon Judkins. Like we're not underwhelmed, we're not overwhelmed, just whelmed. That's how I feel about it. I've got him at a 74.83, which is actually a very respectable score. That's similar to
That's
right in the
exactly
range
the
of
score I have. That's very
74.83. That's wild.
that's yeah.
Um, Yeah, so that's my score, which on our scale would put him in the range of flex, squarely on the high end of a flex option, bordering on fantasy starter. So it's not a bad grade at all. In fact, my highest last year was Jonathan Brooks at a 75 point something. So he's within a point of my top guy from last year. This year's class is a different animal. So I got to be honest that compared to some of the other guys that we studied, I wasn't as impressed. Like, Genty is 11 points higher than him. Hampton is a solid 3 points higher, almost. Well, 2.5. I'm a point and a half higher on Travion Henderson, and then there's even some other guys that are more sleeper names, like a Cam Scativo, that I have higher than Hampton right now. So didn't hate him. I don't think he's going to be in my top 3 in the class. He might be in my top 5 pending draft capital and things like that. So, yeah, don't love him, don't hate him. I think he's a solid back. I think there's a place for him in the NFL. I think how an NFL team uses him is going to be key for his fantasy outlook because he's capable on third down, but he doesn't blow you away. And so if he's on a team with a guy like a Rashad White or a Bucky Irving or anybody that actually is good in that area, he's going to come off the field. And if he's just a 2-down grinder, then all of a sudden he's touchdown dependent. And we know he can do that because he had double-digit touchdowns every year that he was in college. But it's a tough way to make a living sometimes. So it's going to be interesting to see how high he gets drafted, what team he gets drafted to, and what kind of role he ends up earning at the next level, because he's a guy that's going to need a lot of touches, I think. Even in college, he wasn't the most efficient runner. He had a career average in college of maybe right around 5 yards a carry, which usually for a high level NFL prospect, you're wanting like 6+ yards a carry from college. And you expect that that's going to go down in the NFL. They're going to be less efficient in the NFL. So I don't know that Judkins is going to be the most efficient runner. And I don't think that he's got the greatest third down skill set. So that just kind of leaves you like he needs a workload. He needs a lot of touches so that he can wear that defense down. He can rack up the touchdowns. So he's going to be pretty landing spot dependent, I think. Do you agree with that?
Agreed. And I feel like I've said this ad nauseum at this point, but so many of these running backs are very close in our film grade that I think things are going to change a lot depending on the landing spots in the draft with how we end up ranking them overall. And he totally falls square on this. Yeah, I agree. I think he's going to need a lot of touches. He's not going to be a guy that you give 10 to 15 touches a game. He's going to be a fantasy starter. I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, for sure. And I know it might, if you're listening and it sounds like a cop-out to say, oh, let's just wait for the draft. Let's wait for landing spots. Really, we don't usually do that. That is like, if guys are really close, we will let that type of thing be the tiebreaker. But we're not the kind of guys that we're doing all this film eval just to throw it out and change everything after the draft and move all of our rankings around. Like that's not really how we operate. But I think especially at the running back position where opportunity is so key and there's so many guys in this class that we like, and we know they're not all going to be fantasy relevant. So which ones are actually going to get the opportunity, I think, is going to be a big key in this class. So with that being said, this has been a good show. We enjoyed talking about Quinshon Judkins. We are going to be on the bonus show in a few minutes talking RJ Harvey from UCF. And we actually have another episode coming out on the main feed this week. You guys might be excited to hear. Shout out to at Garrett BFF in our Discord. He is a new member over there, and he said, hey, are you guys doing any kind of a Senior Bowl recap? And I was like, hadn't planned on it, but it's a great idea. So I ended up hitting up our friend Mike Anthony, who is a friend of the podcast. He's also in the Discord. He's a member on the site. Mike Anthony from Dynasty Dogs. He's a great content creator, and he was at the Senior Bowl in person. And so we've got an interview with him with kind of his thoughts and takeaways from the Senior Bowl that's going to be releasing later this week. So definitely keep an eye out for that. If you're not already, follow us on social media. You can find me at CouchScoutsFF. You can find Mr. Rupert at Matthew Rupert FF. Join our free Discord, hang out. It's a great time. We love giving advice in there. So that link is in the show notes. And please leave us a review. It really helps people find us. So leave us a review on whatever podcast platform you're using, preferably a 5-star review. And appreciate you guys' support. We'll see you next episode.